Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for StriveScan's virtual college application exploration for all Illinois students, hosted by IACAC. We are so excited to have you here to join us and hear from our experts and panelists today. We want to go over just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. The first is, how do you ask questions? That will be handled in the Q&A. So if you click on Q&A on the bar, you can type in your question. It will all be anonymous and all of the presenters will be able to see it at the same time. Your camera and microphone are off, so you will have complete anonymity. We cannot see you and you are muted. So please participate with us through that Q&A. We'd love to have you sign up for more virtual exploration sessions, and you can do so by visiting the schedule at iacac.org. Also, if you have peers or if you have someone else who you think would really benefit from this session, we highly recommend for you to check out that recording, because all sessions are being recorded and will be available at iacac.org. So without further ado, I would like to turn this over to our panelists today.
Wonderful. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Today we're going to present on self-advocacy during the college search process, and we've got lots of really great information that we want to share with you. Like mentioned, I'm going to make another shameless plug before we get started. Use that Q&A function while we chat, because there's so many parts of this that we know that you're probably curious about, so please ask. And I'll get started with introduction as well and say my name is Jen Darby, and I'm an admissions counselor at Augustana College.
Hey everybody, I'm Keena Griffin. I'm an Assistant Director of Admissions with the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign.
Hello everybody, my name is Rebecca Hernandez and I'm an Assistant Director with DePaul University.
Hi everyone, I'm Faye Eichner and I'm an Associate Director at Purdue University Northwest.
And closing it out, my name is Margaret Jones and I'm one of the admissions officers at Columbia College Chicago. We are super excited that you all are here with us, learning a little bit more about how to advocate for yourselves. And to get us started, I'm going to pass it back to Rebecca to define advocacy.
Wonderful. Alrighty, everybody. Thanks again so much for joining us. So quickly, to even get started, right? We first have to identify, what does self-advocacy even mean? How do you do it? What should you be thinking about as you're thinking about self-advocacy? And that is the ability to articulate one's needs and make informed decisions about the support necessary to meet those needs. So as we go through the next couple of slides and go through the general college search process with you, we're going to talk about different steps that you might encounter and how you can advocate yourself during those steps through the college search process. So thanks again for joining us.
All right, and so with that, Rebecca, that was an amazing explanation. In terms of self-advocacy, the very first thing to identify your own needs is to understand what we have to offer in terms of colleges and in terms of institutions. So educating yourself and conducting research is going to be a really important avenue in that process. And that doesn't just start with the college search process. That starts in your high school setting, earlier on in school, but particularly when you're starting to narrow down exactly what it is you're looking for with different institutions, what may fit you, what may not, what kind of supports you need, and how much of that support you need. Now, one thing that we are all very well known for in terms of the admissions world is using a lot of terminology and a lot of jargon. And understanding how to decipher that is the very first point of understanding how to research institutions and how to advocate for yourself. Now, that being said, it can be quite confusing because there are a ton of institutions across America. There are over 3,000 colleges across the entire country, and that's not even including international institutions across the world. With that said, a lot of us start to talk in really similar terms, but may mean different things. So when I say that I work for the admissions office at Illinois, I mean that I don't operate in terms of any financial aid. And that's important to understand what I'm able to offer you in terms of what supports you'll need. With that said, it's also important to understand that you can speak up, that you are taking ownership of your entire college education process. And that includes and starts with the search. So if there are any resources you need, I always like to tell my students that I'm coming in at year 17 or 18 of your life. You've been in class with yourself and learning alongside of yourself for your entire life. And so you understand your needs way better than I'm able to. I'm here to kind of help you get to that next step and take that next level in what your personal goals are. And so with that, understand that as the student, as the person who's seeking this education, you're in the driver's seat. We are here as representatives to help identify the resources that our institutions have and the ones that we're best well known for. So you'll hear us use terminology like match or fit, and those kinds of things can really help guide you in terms of what we have to offer. So when we use terms like match or fit, match indicates everything that's academic that we have to offer. Fit are those softer areas. Do you have resources for tutoring? Do you have a campus that I'd like to be at? I mean, how is the food? Because those are all important questions. I know the food was a really important question in my college search, but it's important to understand that we use different terminology, but you're in the driver's seat. So regardless of what we're talking about, it's important for you to let us know, to build those relationships, to say, hey, I don't understand exactly what this means. Or, Kina, you talked a lot. What exactly did you just say? I'm here to be a resource to you, and that goes for each of us in our institutions. Now that said, it's important to understand that we are resources. And so when you're researching these schools, we are the experts. We've been in these schools, we've been employed by these schools for a long time, and we've been able to identify and navigate these processes so that you don't have to. Now that helps us in terms of helping you in what you're looking for. So you, like I said, you've been inside of yourself, or you've been inside of school with yourself your entire life. You know what works for you in terms of the educational pathway. You know what might not work. So if I say that our programs offer X, Y, and Z, but you only use Y, ask me follow-up questions. Well, how often do I get a chance to do Y? How often are these resources that I need and the ones that I'm looking for actually going to be available to me? That way I can navigate information that you're looking for and not tell you all the extra stuff, because I will talk your ear off. I will use all the terms. So if you don't guide me in that conversation, I'm not doing my job in being the best resource for you. So it has to be a two-way street.
Thank you so much for that, Kina. And I think that that is something that you all as students have to grow to understand, is that literally we are here to help you, but we can't help what we don't know. And that's where self-advocacy really comes into play. And another thing that I love to point out to students is that you all have innate value. And a lot of the times, like, you're going to hear, you know, admissions representatives trying to tell you what we can do for you and what our school can do for you, but also you can do a lot of things for us. And so don't be afraid to, you know, speak up about your value and how you would be a great fit for that institution and what you can offer our institutions as well. But the second step in thinking about self-advocacy throughout the college search process is to find your support network. And they can exist in a lot of different ways. So we're here to kind of help you understand what each of your support systems can do for you and how to differentiate who you should be going to for what in this process of self-advocacy. So with that being said, I want to talk to you a little bit more about what we as college and university representatives can do for you. So when you're thinking about your colleges, and maybe you have a list of 10, maybe you have a list of 15, maybe you have a list of 20, maybe you have 3 or 4, but your college admissions representative or that person who works for that school is going to be able to assist you through with specific college knowledge. So if you're thinking about, you know, what does this school need for my application? What kind of financial aid opportunities are available? Do they have scholarship opportunities? Is there a separate application for scholarships, or am I automatically considered? All of those things that really are different or differentiate schools from one another are the things that you're going to want to ask that university representative. So if you are a student who's interested in Columbia, you're going to want to reach out to your Columbia rep and say, you know, what are your application requirements? Because while a lot of applications have similar things, some schools might require more, some schools might require less. Some schools might have, like, you know, Columbia is an art school, so sometimes we have students submit portfolios that are required for admission and those sorts of things. So you're going to want to get really friendly with your college and university representative. The second thing that we can do as college and university representatives is help you understand how our institution fits your needs, and on the other side of that, how we maybe don't. So when students, like, sometimes come up to my table when I do have, you know, in-person fairs, or students are asking questions and they want to know about our engineering program, you know, that's an indicator that, you know, you might not be a great fit for our institution, because at Columbia we don't have an engineering program, so I would definitely have to send you somewhere else. So we want to learn from you about what you need from us, and we can talk you through how we can fit that and what we can offer you in order to support you through to graduation. Like, this search process is ultimately going to decide where you're going to be for 4 years, hopefully. And so we want to make sure that, like, this is going to be a good fit for you, you know, beyond that first year, we have to know that this is going to be somewhere where you see yourself going to for all 4 years and completing your education and then starting your career. The third thing that we can offer you is we can help you understand how to navigate institution-specific processes. So whether that's like registering for classes after you're enrolled, or getting connected with an advisor, working through our personal scholarship applications if that's something that you need to do, if there's any additional paperwork that you have to provide. I know like at a lot of schools, we reserve the right to ask for additional information in the application process. Like if we feel we need another essay or we need a letter of recommendation, you can always feel free to reach out to your institution-specific representative on, what you need to turn in, how to turn it in, the best things, and kind of exactly what we're looking for in that sense. So do not hesitate to reach out to your college or university representatives. Like, this is literally what we get paid for. No question is dumb. Like, we want to be able to help you along on this journey, and part of self-advocacy is learning when to speak up and also when to follow up too. So don't be afraid. Like if you reach out to a rep and you don't hear back from them in 2 weeks, like, it's okay to send a follow-up email and say, hey, just following up on this inquiry that I submitted a couple of weeks ago, still want to know a little bit more about X, Y, and Z. So use your voice. Like I said, you all have value too, and make sure that you are, showing your representatives, that value that you have and how you would be a good fit for their institution as well. So I'm gonna pass it over to Faye to talk a little bit about what your high school and guidance counselors can do.
Thanks, Margaret. So guys, when it comes to your high school counselors, they're pretty much like your best friend when you go through this general college knowledge. They know you. A lot of your counselors know you, depending on your school size. If it's especially smaller, they may know you very well. And they know what may fit you, what you might be looking for, because you told them before. So when you're going through the general college knowledge, we want you to know that that's talking about like what size school, say small, medium, or large. If it has your majors, your high school counselor will be able to help narrow down those colleges in that form, because like Margaret was saying, she doesn't have engineering. And on the flip side of that, I'm not big in art. So your counselor will be able to tell you those different things. And you're like, oh, I really want to go to PNW and I'm going to be the best artist ever. And she's like, yeah, no, not so much. So, that'll be the greatest time to talk to your college counselor. Would be like, I'm sure now a lot of them are looking for you guys to try and come and reach out to them in case you have any questions. So don't be scared to just go ahead and make those connections now. If you're in school or virtual, guys, just use all your resources now. We're here for you. Now, the next thing you want to think about is your assistance through all applications. Right now is a very, very good time, no matter what school you're looking at, to apply. Okay, a lot of colleges are doing fee waivers right now if you don't automatically get one. So anything free sounds like it's up my alley. I don't know about everybody else. So you want to look into those things right about right now. Okay, and your college account counselors, we're reaching out to them as college reps and letting them know that we have these different things going on, because unfortunately COVID kind of, it hit our databases. So we don't always have your information just yet. Whereas your counselor, we may have their information and we'll get it to them and they can get it to you. So you want to reach out to them about that. They're really great. A lot of your high school counselors at essay assistance. So they'll let you know, you need this. This may not be the essay you might want to submit for this purpose. They're good with those type of things. They are really honest. I don't think you guys should be offended by it, because everybody is trying to just help at this time. So if you thought that this was the best essay and your your high school counselor kind of chops it up, just go with it, okay? Because they're just trying to help you out, all right? Because I'm going to tell you, going through college, I got my feelings hurt. Margaret might know, she's an English major like I was. Those first papers, we thought they were great. Not so much, but they are there to help you with that. Your externals, we have our external scholarship research up there. So that will be a lot of the programs that say your school hosts, but they may be through other organizations. So your college counselor your high school counselor, I keep saying college counselors. And the reason for that, guys, is because we call them college career counselors on our end. So that's some of that lingo there. I just want to throw it out there for you. So your college career counselor, you may have one at your school. You may just have like a senior counselor or just a counselor that goes A through Z. Whoever you have, reach out for them for this assistance that we're listing here, okay? So when it comes down to scholarship research, just like with essays and doing applications, Now's the time to do that and get that process going. A lot of scholarships may ask for some essays. So even if the school you're applying for isn't asking for it, you want to do the research on it and see if you're going to need to be a pretty great essay writer, I'll say, because we want to get as many scholarships as we can through this. Again, you know, guys, I like free things. So free school sounds like a great deal to me. I want to invest in myself, and, you know, free sounds great. So that's one of the things we want to always take into consideration when you're reaching out to the counselors. The scholarships, applications, essays, they're looking for that, those type of connections right now. Also, they would be able to connect you with Rebecca and Kina and Jen because they have those close connections with us. We're reaching out to them, they're reaching out to us. And the letters of recommendation, so some schools, you know, your counselors, they're like, hey, I'm ready for you, I'm coming to you. But most schools, you need to go to them and ask them, hey, can you write this recommendation letter for me? I might need more than one. Do you know someone else that might, you know, be a good fit? Because you really want to get someone that knows you well. So this is a good time to reach out to your college counselors, your high school, college career counselors, and make sure that you utilize every moment with them right now, guys. So I'm going to pass it along to the next one to take on point number 3.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for that, Faye. Yes, we all love free things. And another way that you can find a resource that oftentimes, I can't say all the time, but oftentimes also provides free assistance through the college search process are our community-based organizations. So these are these CBOs that can be larger CBO organizations like a Chicago Scholars, or can be smaller. For example, Europe is a large one, but they're also small enough where they're in individual high schools, right? So they provide assistance to students on a more individual basis. Chicago Scholars could also be an example for that because they have mentorship programs, right? So they kind of bring it down to a more personalized mentorship level and guide you even through your time within your specific college of choice. So these community-based organizations partner with colleges as well, right? They need to continue moving through their students through their own pipeline, right? And so many of these CBOs have a goal of helping you all get to college. Some are more specific where they try to help first generation students, students of color, students who are undocumented or documented. There's so many different areas, right? And schools, CBOs tend to focus on many different things. There are some that are more academic based in a very specific area of academics, like the arts, or maybe a general area like the STEM field. So look for community-based organizations within your area. Specifically, I like to share this with even students outside of the Chicago area. In the Illinois area, right, those suburbs, there might be smaller CBOs that really focus in your neighborhood, right, in that town that you might be in. And then I do also want you to remember that some of us within our institutions, by nature, we also work with these CBOs. So particularly for me, my job is to work with these big CBOs. And so what I do is that I ensure that once a student lands at DePaul, there are specific scholarships that I know that I am awarding these students because they're part of these CBOs. So there's a win-win there, is that the CBOs know of external scholarships for you, and then sometimes that being part of these community-based organizations will also offer you additional scholarships at the institution that they might be partnered with. And when I mention institutions, that I mean either 2 or 4-year universities. The last thing that I do want to mention is that these CBOs are also just there to provide you guidance, right? They're there to assist you, to help you how to learn more about yourself. You might be answering a couple of quizzes that are about yourself. And I know some students are like, if I get another quiz to learn more about myself, I'm done. But I say that because a big part of what we talked about of this self-advocacy is knowing how to look within, right? And knowing how to ask those questions to learn more about yourself. So I am a huge proponent of these CBOs. So if you have some near you, please make sure that you do get a chance to connect with them. The last one that I will pitch as well is College Greenlight. So make sure that you follow that website. We'll add a couple of links later on, but just make sure that CBOs are another really great resource for students through this process.
Awesome. And then last but certainly not least on this part of the step in terms of advocating for yourself, it's important to recognize that your family is also an amazing resource during this process. And so for some of you, you may or may not have family members who are participating in the college search process with you, visiting colleges, sitting in on sessions like these, etc. And if you do, it's important to realize how you can utilize that resource and kind of rely on your family members in ways to help you. The first one on here being understanding financial and social fit. And so as you're working through your college search process, we talked about this already, we like free things. And so it's important to talk to your family about what does that financial situation look like for you and your family, and having those conversations and not being nervous to have those conversations, because when you get to the college side, schools are going to ask you to share that information, or you may be in an interview setting with a college admissions counselor says, you know, what does that conversation look like for you and your family? And being as transparent as possible is going to be useful, because number one, it's going to show you whether or not the school is going to be a good fit for you financially, but also it may lead to other avenues of them explaining, well, we have this financial aid process for you to explore, etc. And so just making sure that you are as prepared as possible and not being nervous about those conversations. So once you've talked to your family members, even bringing them in on some of those financial conversations with institutions. I know that sometimes families and students are always in meetings and they'll sit down and they'll say, well, we didn't necessarily want to bring this up, but it is a question we have in the back of our mind. Ask about that. Even if we as counselors can't answer that question directly, we can usually point you in the right direction to ask someone about that. And once again, going back to Keena's point earlier, understanding the role of who does what at an institution is a big part of that too. The next half of that, social fit, is another thing to consider. So are there special things that, you know, you and your family have talked about in terms of this is a number one priority for me to see in a school or an institution? So if a religious affiliation is really important to you and your family, or there's certain cultural aspects that you want to make sure that an institution offers, discussing that with your family, because sometimes they can be the ones to point out those things that like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Or you'll be sitting in a meeting with your mom or your dad and they'll say, oh gosh, do you remember that one time you mentioned X, Y, and Z activity was really important to you? Why don't you ask about that? So those conversations, once again, are going to help you find the best fit for you overall. The other thing as well, continued support in your advocacy. Sometimes it's nice to turn back and ask a family member, hey, can you just back me up on this? Like, I'm a little nervous to mention this, or I want to talk about this, or can you help me get registered for this? And that's a great way as well to kind of find some support. However, if there are family members on this call today, sometimes it's interesting to also discuss the fact that you may be looking at some of these other things we've talked about and said, I just need as much help advocating for that as my students. And that's okay. You are not alone. I would say the majority of conversations I have with family members when they come in with a visit with a student is that they're like, we're just trying to navigate this as a family member and as a parent or a grandparent, etc. And so there's some great resources that I would encourage you to explore. Once again, building that knowledge that you can have going through this process and advocating for yourself. And I linked one here in this presentation for you to specifically explore through the Common App, which is a resource that students can use to apply to multiple different institutions. So hopefully that's a resource you'll see as you're going through the application process, but they specifically have a plan for parents. And I would say it's very general for all family members to use into how to support your student during this process, how to make sure to talk about financial aid, what types of questions to ask about financial aid, etc. So even if you're thinking, okay, I need to make sure my parents are as prepared for this process as I am, or your family members, go ahead and share that resource with them. Or if you're going through this process without some family support, maybe reading through that on your own time to also see what types of conversations should you be considering that maybe you're not seeing on all the typical student checklist of, you know, ask this or ask this, because they're maybe thinking a little bit more about family conversation. So keeping that all in mind. And then I'll go ahead and pass it on to step 3. I think Keena's starting us off with step 3 here.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, Jen. So you all did an amazing job at talking about the kinds of resources that are available to our students. one thing to note is that these resources don't just stick with you only through high school and into the search for college. Once you're on campus, although you're there alone, these resources more often than not, they track you. They want to make sure that you're doing well, because our job is not just to get you here, it's to get you moving toward degree or toward your degree. So retention, persistence, those are all really important facets. So the importance of building up advocacy is to make sure that you understand how to control that narrative throughout your entire time at college. Now, while a lot of resources do focus on that high school preparation aspect and searching for colleges, that next step can be on you. So it's very important to understand exactly what that looks like and how to continue that conversation, because the very first moments you step foot on campus are some of the most formative and most crucial. So with that, you need to understand what's available at your institution and how to navigate what's available, so that by the time you're there as a student, you're not surprised. You're not being blindsided by saying, oh, nobody told me about this. I never actually took time to step foot on campus. I didn't know I have to walk 30 minutes between one class to the next. That was a story for me, my first time at Illinois, 2 opposite ends of campus. I had 10 minutes to get there. So, you know, that's something that you want to make sure that you're navigating. You want to make sure that the resources that are there, you're using to make sure anything that's important to you, you understand. Now with that, on the college side, on our end, a lot of us oftentimes have a hand to play in the college visit itself, because we want to make sure that we make you aware of everything that's available at our institution, even the things that you may not know to ask. Now, in terms of college visits, each institution and each type of institution is going to offer different things and may offer different amenities. For example, there may be a lot of visits based on the Office of Undergraduate Admissions, but they may also offer you a chance to meet with faculty and professors so you can get a picture of what that academic classroom setting looks like. You may have a chance to sit in on a class. These are often available on our visit websites. Schools tend to pay a lot of money to make sure that our visit websites are navigable, that they are highlighting the things that we want to promote to our students. So the website is a way that you can go to manage your college visits very easily. Oftentimes there's not so much, hey, Faye, can I come visit PNW? Or can I come and see DePaul or any of these other institutions? It's, okay, let me make sure I make this reservation online. I want to know who I'm meeting with. I want to sign up for these types of things because they're all available on the website. I can talk a lot, as you guys may know. And so I can tell you everything that we've got to offer at Illinois in the span of about 30 seconds. But if you didn't catch me on the first time, then that website is making the navigation process a lot easier. It's also important to understand what kind of visit you need when. In my cases, with Illinois, we're a large public institution. You're probably not going to get a chance to see everything on the very first visit. We offer a number of visit programs, a lot of them free, because all of us want to make sure our institutions are accessible. And so with that, when you're a prospective student, when you haven't applied yet, that visit looks a lot different than when you are a student who's been admitted and you're making that final decision between 2 or 3 different schools. So those different kinds of visits expose you to different resources, be they early outreach in preparation for the application portion, or be they, okay, this is time to make my decision. Where are my faculty going to guide me? What kinds of resources do I have in support? Who can I speak with next on your campus to guide me through these processes? Now, if you're ever confused about that, like I said, I have a gift for gab. I can explain everything within 30 seconds. A lot of us have these similar features. We want to be resources. We want to talk to you. And we want to navigate you through those next steps. So I'm going to turn this over to our next navigator for you.
And before we have our step number 2, I just want to remind everybody that we have the Q&A portion here. I know we have about another 15 to 16 minutes left. So we're going to leave some time once we're done with this slide to answer your questions live, but feel free to add some right now in the chat box. We have a couple of us that will be able to answer those questions for you, even as we're going through these next steps. Okay. So thank you all so much for being here.
Yeah, and I'm going to reiterate what Rebecca just said. It doesn't even necessarily have to be full thought out comments or questions. If you're just like, oh, I'm really nervous about this, you can just drop that in there. We'd love to have those discussions with you. But thinking a little bit about the second part of this visiting campus experience, this is another big part of advocating for yourself and knowing what resources you will need on a college campus that you choose ultimately in the future. And so thinking about that experience, then you need to kind of explore the resources that they have available. Like Kina mentioned, there's a lot of different opportunities for you to connect with different resources when you're on a campus. And so whether that be, you know, classroom setting or faculty appointments, meeting with different clubs and organizations, athletics, etc. Those are opportunities you can explore. Now, I will do a little bit of a disclaimer. Obviously, we're in the time of COVID right now, so a lot of institutions have changed some of these resources and meetings that you can set up with these different resources, and I would say probably a majority of them have gone virtual. At least I can speak on that for my institution in particular. But with that being said, still search those out and know, if I really love music, then you should probably find someone to connect to in an ensemble, whether that be a student or a faculty member who's, leading that, and vice versa with any other activity that you're thinking of. Another thing to think about when advocating for resources you need, it's not just clubs and organizations or things that you like, but if you have any special things that you need in regards to tutoring services, academic accommodations, anything like that, that would best serve you as a student over the next 4 years, please make sure to seek those out as well. Things, for example, like if having a counseling center on a campus is really important for you, reach out and see if you can connect with someone who is a part of that center to ask about what services that they offer. Or if you know that you would like to have some type of academic accommodation or that you need an academic accommodation, meet with that office on their campus. Another big part of this exploring resources and different student services that are offered is that be aware that institutions are going to call these different centers and areas a ton of different names. I could probably list all of Augustana's different centers, and then every single person on this call would be like, that's actually called this here. So asking your admissions counselor that is at that institution, okay, I know I'm interested in X, Y, and Z. Can you please point me in what direction that is at your institution? That's really useful. Otherwise, just know when you're exploring websites, if you don't see something pop up by the name that you automatically expect it to, that doesn't mean they don't offer it. It's probably just called something else. So know that sometimes you might have to do a little bit of different digging depending on each institution. And then the last little point that's on here is knowing what do these provide and how do these differ between universities. I cannot emphasize this strongly enough in advocating for yourself, but document as much as you can and keep track of that information so that you can come back to it. If you go on a college visit and you say, okay, I really liked their campus, I really liked their academic program, but I wasn't super sure about the food, mark all that stuff down, right? Then you can track that all and come back and compare each institution you visited and really feel like you've got the best knowledge overall. There's so much information that you're going to receive at every single visit. It's going to be impossible for you to remember every single detail of that. So I always say on the car ride home, sit in the car with, either if you came with your family, chat with them. If you came on your own, maybe before you leave the campus, take your phone out, put a note in there, and start writing down some of the information that stood out to you, things that you like, dislike, and maybe even questions that you still have. That way you can go back and really feel like that you can compare. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to our number 3 point on here. So I think that's going to be Margaret. Yes.
It is, you are correct. So one thing that I know personally, when I was going through the college search process as a first generation college student, it was just really confusing about what I should even be asking when I go to these types of visits. And so understanding, what types of questions to ask, and you can reach out to definitely like your high school counselor for those sorts of questions, but understanding how the answers to those questions really influence your decision. And so, it's one thing to ask, what's your graduation rate? But it's another thing to understand, how the graduation rate and how, their career preparation and things like that can really help you, or and if they really have what you need to be successful. And that kind of ties into point number 4, which I'll pass it on in just a minute. But just really be aware of the impact of the question, and don't be afraid to, ask them, I don't really even know how this impacts this, like my decision. And, having that conversation with your admissions rep, because we are privy to it and we are very aware of it. And it's literally, like I said, our jobs to know these things and our jobs to answer your questions. So don't ever hesitate to ask a question, even if you think it's dumb, but no question is dumb. If it's something that is going to help you in your decision, like, please ask that, because it is our pleasure to help you through that process. And so I'm gonna pass it on to for our last point.
Awesome. Thanks, Margaret. So when we think about as individuals, how we define success, it all looks differently for each of us. And so you have to understand what you need and what you're looking for in an institution. So like when Margaret was just talking about the graduation rate, as an incoming freshman, you're kind of like, that somebody told me to ask what the graduation rate was. That's what we're thinking on our end. The truth of it is that it is important, but you don't know how the numbers play into it. So what you want to know is what you're interested in. How many people have jobs or internships or things that's going to play into your success as a student at that institution. Success, again, like I said, it looks quite differently for some of us. Success for some will be only about that academic side of it, but for most, it will have a balance between not just academic, but personal and hobbies and things of that sort that also shape you as an individual as you're growing up and becoming a young adult. So when you're going on campus and you're looking at everything that's going to define what you need, you want to think about that and take full advantage, and always take the opportunity to connect with your admissions counselors at the specific institutions, as well as if you have someone else that you feel, because we know a comfortability level has to be in play, your high school counselor, your family, whoever your resource is, you want to make sure that they know what you're looking for as far as what your success looks like, so that you can get that when you're going on that visit, to be able to ask the correct questions to the correct people. And there are no wrong answers. So no matter how you say it, it's going to be asked correctly. Okay.
Wonderful. All right, everybody. Well, thanks so much for listening to all of us and taking some time to also pose some of your questions. I know Jen is really our leader in these questions here. I was able to answer a couple for her while she was presenting. So I do want to first just kick it off to answer one of the questions that was on here while she was presenting. And we had a student who specifically asked, and I think this might be, again, our lingo and how we talk when we're presenting as college representatives, but someone mentioned early registration for college kind of question mark. What if I'm a junior? I haven't taken the official SAT or ACT yet. What do I need to register? And maybe should I wait? So this was kind of a two-part thing where I was thinking about how to answer this question. And it's a really great question, right? The role of a junior through the college search process. So one is there are several universities that actually have programs for juniors throughout the year. Some of them are going to be over the summer. And this, again, is that conversation with your high school counselor about some programs that may be available to you over the summer, or reaching out to a specific university you may be passionate about to see if they have any programs for students as juniors, right? It could be, maybe it's just a week long, maybe it's a day long. Again, want to be transparent that right now there's a lot of different things happening with COVID, so we had to move a lot of things virtual. But in the coming months, things may change, or we may just need to adjust some of our events virtual. So keep an eye out on that. But the second portion of this was about the ACT or SAT, right? Specifically for DePaul, we do not require the test score. We are test optional. So we understand, and I think a lot of institutions due to COVID have adjusted their application process, because you not taking your test score is not necessarily your choice, right? This has been something that due to the pandemic, you haven't been able to do. So just keep that in mind, that as you look at institutions, that is a great question to ask in order to advocate for yourself and in the current climate is, what are your current standings when it comes to the ACT or SAT? Are you test optional? Are you test blind, meaning do not submit it, we're not going to consider it at all. So keeping those options. But I do want to open it up in case any of my other colleagues maybe read that question differently or wanted to add anything else to that.
I kind of read it the same way, but I want everybody to raise their hand who's test optional on here, just so our audience knows for each college. Pretty much everybody right now, guys, so that's a good deal for you guys. So always make sure you reach out. But as far as early registration for college, if you're saying sign up to get more information, we welcome that as soon as possible. If you're saying like do the application, no, don't do that at my school, because I'm going to toss it out if you're a junior and you have to do it again next year. So if that does not answer your question, you can reach out to us and we will make sure you know that we answer it again. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that it sounds like there were lots of great questions regarding visiting. And so that seemed like a very popular question. So we have a variety of students who've asked some questions on visiting. So I'm going to combine those a little bit. And I wonder if it'd be really useful if we could each talk maybe individually about some of the visit options at this time. And then also to mention specifically when maybe juniors, if one of us wants to kind of cover that, when juniors should start visiting and if your campus offers visits year round. So I don't know if one of y'all want to start since I answered that. Keita?
Yeah, yeah. Also, in the interest of time and leaving our contact information, do we want to move to the next slide just so everyone knows how they can contact us? Because we are running just a little bit short, so I will try to be brief. I encourage students to, I'm a campus visits advocate. Get on as many campuses as you can, as many times as you can. Now, with that said, we're not offering in-person visits because we have a large campus. We want to do our job to protect our student body as well as our visitors. We have made robust adjustments and additions to our virtual visits program. We're offering student-led tours. We are offering student panels, admissions counselor sessions, one-on-ones, phone calls, text messages, whatever you need, we've got it. And I think a lot of institutions are that same way. So as soon as it's safe to do so, we will go back to offering a ton of campus visits, but for now, we want to protect everybody.
I want to add on to what Keena said is that that's the same thing that a lot of institutions are doing. Like very few schools are offering in-person visits, but I am a huge proponent of vibes and energy and the types of, feelings that you get when you do visit campus, but also when you interact with folks. And so when you are going on these virtual visits, and for my people who are juniors or sophomores, it's never too early to start that conversation and to start, really fostering that relationship with that college or university that you're interested in. But just getting a sense of kind of how you feel when you're interacting with folks from any institution that you're interested in. I know personally, when I was going through the college search process, there was 2 schools that I was really considering. And I was an athlete, I was playing tennis, and they were rival schools and they didn't know that I was on each other's mailing list. But like one of them, I said, I'm really considering going to this school. And they like flat out hung up on me. And so like, that was definitely a vibe that I got from that school. And I was like, I don't really want to go there. Like, that's not anywhere that I want to end up. So definitely, take note of the caliber of programs that folks are offering and just like the level of care that admissions representatives are providing. Those sorts of things really do tell you things about the institution. So just know in your heart what you need and what you want and how you want to be talked to. And if a school is not meeting that, maybe a good idea to check it out.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and add into that too. There are lots of virtual options for you to explore for institutions. It may be a little overwhelming when you're navigating those sites. Take your time and plan out the time to kind of look through those at different institutions, because just going into it last minute, I don't want anyone to feel like that, just because a lot of schools are trying to offer as many ways to connect as possible. But if you do go to on-campus visits, please explore, the different options available. Specifically at Augustana, we are offering in person, but they're very small, and we have lots of precautions before students and families make it to campus that we're taking to keep those safe. But because we're a smaller campus compared to what Keena just shared, we've got about 2,500 students on campus versus the amount that he's got on campus. So it's a little bit different offering those types of visits depending on what institution you're looking at.
Yeah, and just be mindful on time. I know, Faye, you feel free to add something. Okay. I just want to remind everybody, this will literally turn off at 3:15. So just want to remind everybody, feel free to take a picture of this contact list if you do have any additional questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, guys, that you can always go on and make sure that you check out IAC videos next week, because a lot of the universities are going to be doing presentations like this. And if you can't join, they're all recorded, so you guys will be able to see it later too. So that can be another option as far as seeing visits with the schools as well.
With that, do we want to hand it back over so that we can do some wrap-ups real quick?
Yes.
All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We just want to wrap a few things up. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly to just go over a couple of things. So we do want to thank everyone for joining us today. When I close and end this webinar, you will get a very quick 4-question survey. And on that, what we would like you to do is just to answer those. It'll help us improve these sessions in the future. We'd love for you to sign up for more sessions, as our panelists have said. IACAC.org, or to just bookmark those to come back and watch the recordings later. And again, all sessions are being recorded and will be available at IACAC.org. So thank you again so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and we wish you the best of luck in your college application and exploration process. Bye.